Okay, welcome to another week and another episode of Rental House versus High Income ETFs. This is episode 10.1. So basically, this is the beginning of the 10th month and the second video of the month. I started out like 10.0, 10.1, 10.2. So this is the second video this month. So if you are new, what I did, I sold most of our rental properties. And one of the last properties, the house in the picture, we took the proceeds and we invested it into some high income ETFs, mainly covered call ETFs. Let's get going and see how this is doing. But before we go too far, I got to ask you to subscribe. So my channel has grown a little bit over the past month. I've gained maybe 50 subscribers. I'm trying to get to 1,000. I'm getting close to 500. It'd be great to get to 1,000. I would love it if I get to 1,000. And I hate to ask people this, but I have a hobby. I retired in April and sold most of our rental properties. So I got some free time on my hands. So what I've been doing is restoring grave markers, tombstones, in some cemeteries around the area. Basically, these tombstones are some are completely buried. I go around, I find where they're buried. I have a probe that you would use to try to find a septic tank. And I find these tombstones that have been knocked over and broken and everything else. And I will dig them up and I will make a new base for them and clean them and glue them together. So the series of pictures here, I'm digging up a tombstone. Here's what it looks like. It's broken. Here I took it home and I glued it back together and I mortared in the crack. And then I set it into a new base and I mortared it in and it's good as new. And I've done about 40 of these this summer. And I've been paying for all the materials out of my own pocket. I don't get paid for this. I'm volunteering. I won't say it's getting expensive, but I've have purchased probably 50 bags of concrete for these bases. I've purchased adhesive, which is very expensive for marble and granite. I've purchased cleaning supplies, which is expensive. It's called D2. It's 80 bucks a gallon. So I spent a lot of money out of pocket, and people ask me if they can support me doing this and keep going. You can support me by donating a little bit of money. I'd appreciate it if you could do that. If not, subscribing will also help. So let's look at how the market did in general this past week. So it is up, and I think the 637.18 is a new all-time high for the SPYI, the ETF that tracks the S&P 500. This line in the middle is a 20-day moving average, just a simple 20-day moving average, and I just use that as a guideline to see what's happening. I don't try to time the market, jump in and out, but I may use this if I want to determine when I'm going to buy some more shares of this ETF. If we're in a total bull market for an extended period of time and I have money sitting around, I may buy some shares here and there, but usually I like to buy shares when the price pulls back a little bit. If it pulls back toward the lower band, I may buy some more shares. Also look at the relative strength index at 62. It was up here pretty high. It took that dip here a few weeks ago, and now it's creeping back up to 62, which isn't extremely high. If it gets to about 70 to 75, then I would say it's overbought again. So I think we're still going to have a continued upward trend. So in the news, there's some talk about Trump and Putin getting together and talking about the Ukraine war. And if that turns out to be positive news, I expect things to go up even more. Okay, what's been happening lately or last week? So we are up this week. We have our equity sitting at 82,423. That's a all-time high for this account. We have margin sitting at 70,749. That is not an all-time high for this account. We'll look at that more in a minute. You might wonder, what am I buying or what did I buy? So down here at the bottom, I started out with QDTE. I have 2,700 shares. I added some AIPI, ended up with 700 shares. I got 150 shares of QQQI, 200 shares of SPYI, 500 shares of GIAX. Let's go ahead and jump here. This is like a history of what I bought. So way back in around November 1st, 2024 is when I started this. I started out buying a whole bunch of QDTE, and I bought some at different times, and I got a fractional share here somehow. I must have just invested an even amount, ended up with a half a share. Bought some AIPI, and then down here I bought QDTE, about that half share because I got not OCD, but if I did, that would bother me. And then I added some more AIPI, then I added some more QDTE. If I remember right, I bought this by accident. I was going to buy AIPI, and I bought this by accident, but it's okay. It's not like the end of the world or anything. And then I got interested in GIAX, and then price dropped way down here to 1465, and I bought a bunch more GIAX, so my average cost is down quite a bit. Then I decided I want to make my core positions in this account SPYI and QQQI. Those are my favorite ETFs, SPYI and QQQI. But I also wanted to buy some more AIPI, so I bought 50 shares here, and I bought 50 shares here, and then I bought some more QQQI. So that's where I'm at as of today. So let's look at what has happened recently. So this week, I had to pay for that $70-some thousand in margin, $320. And then I earned a distribution for QDTE of $644. If we jump here, we can see a history of the distributions. So I have these cells collapse. These rows here collapse because it was taking too much room, but these are the totals. November, 3,500. You can see each month all the way down here to June. And then you have July. I ended up with $3,400. Now we are in August. We've had 2 distributions of QDT, which pays every Friday. Toward the end of the month, we'll have AIPI, QQQI, SPYI, GIAX, and August has 5 Fridays in it, so I'll have an extra payment of QDTE this month, which is nice. So Beans QDTE has started out pretty good, pretty strong. I'm expecting the month of August to be over $4,000. I've been thinking about what I should buy next, and I think I will just continue buying QQQI and SPYI until I get to about 500 shares of each, and then I'll evaluate what else I want to buy. I could just stick to these 5 ETFs, or I might expand into something else. I do like the ones that pay weekly. I know 35% return per year is 35% per year, but it's nice having those weekly payments come in. It's just exciting seeing that hit your account each week and see it paying down that margin amount each week. So I've been looking at blocks, BLOX, and I've been also looking at Maggie, MAGY, which is Round Hill. I think both those pay out on Mondays. So that'd be neat to see a payment come out on Mondays and Friday. I'll decide that later when we hit our quota for QQQI and SPYI. This slide here shows what I projected at the beginning of this experiment compared to what's actually happening now. So I have scrolled up a little bit so you don't see all the months before June. So I started out at 70,000, and I expect it to be sitting at about 94,000 in equity right now. And I expect to be using about 71,000 in margin. So I would have expected to have 166,000 invested total when you count the margin and equity together. This here is what I expect to gain weekly, 0.75% each week. And total gain, I would have expected to gain 35% up to now. It's been about 9.5 months. So I was very optimistic. And the 75% represents how much margin I'm using toward my equity. So this is what I projected. So over here is what's actually happening. I am sitting at 82,000. I'm using 70,000 in margin. I got 153,000 invested. This week I gained 5%, which is better than the 0.75%. But of course I lost 3.61%. Total, I'm up 17.75% compared to 35. And I'm using 86% margin toward my equity. Now, that doesn't mean I'm using 80% of my available margin. This is a self-imposed limit that I put myself on. I actually have about $45,000 in margin buying power right now. So if I wanted to, I could go out and buy another $40,000 worth of something, and that margin would jump up to 110,000. But I don't want to do that because if the market drops, then I would get a margin call and then I'd have to sell some of my shares. So I'm trying to stick at the 75% or whatever. But what I'm been doing actually is sticking to what I projected I would be at. So I'm right about where I thought I'd be with margin. The only thing that's not sticking where it's supposed to be is my equity. So that's got to be fixed somehow. So this blue line down here just represents the 1-year anniversary. After 1 year, I would have expected to be at 103,000 in equity and almost a 50% return in 1 year. I know people say that's crazy, overly optimistic and everything else, but this is 50% increase on the equity, but I'm getting a boost from the margin. So in reality, I might be only getting like 30%, but I'm getting 30% off this column, the total, which increases my equity column more. I think that makes sense. Makes sense to me. So I'm using the margin to boost my yield. So that's why this is so high. But when it goes down hard also, this green line just represents the end of the year where things should be. And I think at the end of the year, what I would do is recalculate this here spreadsheet and kind of start over perhaps and start a clean slate. I might keep two sheets, one like a total return with this one, and then start another one fresh at the first of 2026. I also might be tossing on a video here in the short term future about what I might do with this account in the future. So this money is really not money I'm depending on for anything particular, but at some point my wife might want a new car or something, and I could just withdraw money out of here. Let's say the car is 20,000. Let's just make an even number. I could sell some shares and take 20,000 out and go buy a new car. Or what I could do is let this margin pay down for 4 or 5 months. If I'm getting that $4,000 a month in dividends, about 5 months, this margin would be paid down roughly 20,000. At that point, I could take out 20,000 in margin. The way that I have my margin set now, I don't take margin out to spend, but you can take margin out to spend. So I could borrow 20,000 margin, have it transferred to my checking account. So what I could do is take 20,000 out in margin and buy the car and let the dividends pay back the margin loan because I'm earning like 30% on this money and the margin's only cost me 6%. Now, some people might call this dangerous, reckless, everything else. But anyhow, this whole experiment's been working the way I expected. And it's really no different than if you have a house or rental property and you borrow money on your rental property and use that money to go buy a car and let the rental house pay back your loan for the car. So this whole thing I'm looking at, this whole experiment with the ETFs is basically my replacement of my rental houses. Since we're talking about that, let's look and see how that's comparing. So if I would have kept that rental house, this is about where I'd be sitting at. So we were renting that for $700 a month, insurance, $80 a month, taxes, $200 a month. This is like July, this is August. So assume I didn't have any loans on this property, I would have $4,200 in my checking account if everything was going smooth. I didn't have any extra expenses. And I'm also calculating that this house would appreciate by 4% per year, which is $233 a month. So that's where this column is coming in, 233, 466. So I'd be sitting at 72,330. So the equity plus the cash, I'd be sitting at 76,530. And every week somebody will comment and say, you have other costs, you have maintenance costs, all those other things. Yes, at the end of the year, I'm going to figure out some average costs in the past 3 years that I had with this house. You toss those in here to get like a yearly total of how things are sitting. So yeah, I'm totally aware of those things. I just, to make it simple, I didn't include those. And to be honest, even if I did include those, it would just make the rental house lose by that much more, which is what I'm sitting at here in this last slide. So the rental house is sitting at 76,530. My ETF's at 82,423. So my ETFs are up 5,800. The ETF is doing somewhat what I thought it would do. It's not doing as well as I thought it would do, but I'm totally happy with it. And I plan on keeping this going indefinitely. I'll keep this going and see what happens. What's different about this video than some other YouTube channels? Other YouTube channels will say, retire on Misty or retire on this ETF or that ETF. And they'll throw some hypothetical scenarios out there, like how much this is going to return and how much money you'll get each month. But they're not using real money. They're just using spreadsheets and different things. What I'm doing here is actually using real money, and you see the real ups, the real downs, and the real results. So nothing projected here. This is like real money, real results. So if you like that type of thing, make sure you subscribe like I asked earlier in the video, and we'll see you next week.